Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, and regulatory landscape and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me is Ryan Steelberg, President and CEO of Veritone. We have Milan McGraw, Head of AI and Machine Learning at Amazon Web Services, as well as Tara King Hughes, Vice President of Technology and Data at Vital Voices. And we're here to discuss why improper organization, management, and analysis of data could lead to ineffective and poor outcomes, regardless of the models that you are employing. It is great to have everyone with us. Ryan, welcome back to Trade Talks. Give us a refresher, a brief overview of where Veritone sits within the data ecosystem.
We're a leading enterprise AI company. Think of us at the application layer. So we work directly with the end customers where we help them on board, understand index and kind of turn their data assets into value, whether that's efficiency gain or revenue. So we're excited to be back here. AWS has been a great partner. We're a strategic partner with them. So a lot of our payloads run on AWS. So we're going to have a fun, vibrant conversation here today.
Yeah, and I'm certainly looking forward to it. And Milan, of course, AWS, it's a behemoth. Tell us about your role and where that plays within the data ecosystem.
You got
there
it.
we go.
Yep, you got it. So my role here at AWS focuses on guiding enterprises through their AI/ML journey, from initial strategy development to implementing scalable machine learning operation at scales. And so we work with companies across multiple industries and verticals, from healthcare to manufacturing to technology, to really help them understand how they can drive innovation and operational efficiency across their organizations.
And Tara, it's great to have you on the show as well. Tell us about Vital Voices.
Vital Voices Global Partnership is an organization that's been around for 28 years, and it is focused on helping women leaders around the globe solve some of the most complex problems.
And I want to kick this conversation off with you because I want to understand from the end user perspective how you're employing and leveraging these types of technologies and solutions.
Well, formulating a story is never easy, but with so much data, it makes it very challenging to extrapolate some specific narratives and stories. And this is why our partnership with Veritone is so crucial. It allows us to centralize our data, terabytes upon terabytes, and use AI to tag it so that we can collaborate efficiently with each other around the globe, and then share those stories to amplify our network and to highlight the communities and the work that they're doing.
And Tara, I would imagine, because your mission to drive public good for nearly 30 years at this point, that the ethical and responsible use of data and making sure that the stories are told in the right way is paramount to what you're doing.
Absolutely. Maintaining trust and ensuring data integrity and promoting ethical practices is definitely needed in this increasingly connected world. So partnering with Veritone, who provides that secure platform with the backbone of AWS, allows us to do that efficiently and effectively, so that when we share our stories, it's shared by authorized users.
Yeah. And Ryan, let's talk more about that. In order to fully realize the benefits of AI, it really does come down to the operations and the processes and the solutions and having the right type of model.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it starts with the data. This is no longer, technologies that are limited to the big movie studios, right? Or the Masters golf tournament where they have all these data assets. The key here is to empower Terra and Vital Voices to be able to, number one, cost effectively and securely access their data assets, right? Wherever they are, be able to, again, aggregate them into a common platform, but then apply the AI strategically against it. So it makes it very easy for them to search, research, find exactly what they're looking for. And some of the stuff can be ad hoc, but for example, if there's something that's happening and we're talking about it's a US aid project overseas, and Tara and team are trying to build a very organic story associated with that, we could start to do real-time correlations and sift through, to your point, terabytes and terabytes of data to surface very relevant content from powerful voices and women to be able to turn that into a storyline almost immediately. So again, it starts with data ingestion, data security, but then having the tools that are natively can act upon those data sets so it can actually turn that, I would say, tonnage of content into actionable value and reach.
Yeah. And Milan, when you think about tonnage of content, I'm trying to wrap my head around, all of the data that AWS is responsible for, and securing that data, make sure it's structured, it's quality data. How do you work with the multitudes of partners and as you're thinking about data privacy and having that good, secure output?
Yeah. That's exactly that, right? So think of AWS as like the superhero of data protection, right? We're giving companies, the ability to take control of their data, lock down who sees what, encrypt like there's no tomorrow with managed precision, military-grade precision over their privacy. But we're not going about this alone, right? We're not solo. We brought in partners like Veritone to create that GenAI Center of Excellence. It's a think tank dedicated to making AI smart, but responsible, right? So the bottom line is, in the world of AI, your data is your most valuable assets. So having a strategy in place to treat it like the crown jewels with paramount security is fundamental.
Brian, tell us more about how you're detecting data where it's sensitive imagery, and how you can protect that. How do those tools detect it, define it, mitigate that risk, respond to it?
Yeah. So I'll do two layers because it's really exciting. We've gone through a transition from, I'll say, cognitive pure AI to generative AI. And what I mean by that is, let's say we ingest, let's say 100 hours of video that comes in and we've aggregated it from Vital Voices. First, we can apply a multitude of different models, right? Some proprietary, can be third-party models, they can be models from AWS, but we immediately interrogate that data down to a frame-by-frame basis, identify every voice, obviously pun intended, but also every face, every object, what they're talking about, the transcription. So your ability now is now looking layers, so it allows you and affords you the ability to cost-effectively search and understand what's inside that content. The power now with generative AI is so powerful is now we can take those data sets and put it into a natural language opportunity. So you can do, questions asked. We can do natural storylines and say, help me, I need to write a script about this storyline. And since we've already indexed all the content, you're not just getting a text script back. You're getting a text script back that's directly tied to the video and imagery and audio assets to realize that. So you can use this, and we're talking about security. Of course, you can use the index to find stuff that may be inappropriate, but by all means. But and again, that's, I'll say, built in, and that's sort of almost table stakes today. But we're looking at amplification, right? We want to use these for the attributes for, I'll say, AI for good, right? And be able to leverage this hyper indexing and this AI opportunity to get the vital voices out there. And I'll throw it out there is in any language, right? We may have a piece of content that comes in here in, I'll say, standard, quote unquote, global English, but we want to turn that into 50 derivative languages in a very cost-effective means. So that's kind of the power of what we're talking about together.
I think we also need to address the fact when it comes to the public as well. This is great for content and enterprise and so forth. But when we think about the public sector, how critical AI tools are when it comes to working with law enforcement, national defense, being able to have that evidence and be able to manage it and make sure that it's transparent and secure, because these are, you can imagine all the different types of ways that this can be used.
Yeah, I'll give a kudos out again to AWS. We started our business over 10 years ago, really focusing on media and entertainment companies, the big movie studios and the like. Because of the relationship between Veritone and AWS, we were able to shift, frankly, a lot of what we're doing now. We're servicing the Department of Justice, the DoD, and other agencies. To your point exactly about that level of security and I'll say scrutiny against these data assets. AWS has been a great partner because historically, we would have to run all of these payloads, and whether that's just storage or CPU or GPU payloads in a cloud environment. So like AWS Cloud or even FedRAMP, and I don't want to get too technical here, but AWS over the years, I believe they are now CJIS compliant, meaning they satisfy certain security protocols in, I believe, 48 states already. So in effect, from a cost perspective, I can serve Terra and Vital Voices and state and local law enforcement or the Department of Justice in the same instance of AWS, which is a huge game changer for us in terms of speed and velocity.
Well, Milan, let's talk about more of how you work with your partners, because when generative AI first became part of the consumer vernacular in late 2022, my first thought was, okay, what's the ethical and responsible use? What happens with copyright and IP? Who owns what? So how are you working with partners to address those types of challenges?
Yeah, when we talk about bias and some of these things, it's not just about tech jargon. It's a critical challenge that can make and break the effectiveness of any artificial intelligence system. So think of AI like a super smart student, but the quality of the learning depends really on the quality and the diversity of the information sources. So removing these biasness is not just a nice to have, it's essential. So how do we combat some of this AI bias? It's like creating a perfect recipe for fair and accurate AI. We need diverse data collection, and we help our partners do that. Imagine gathering information from a wide range of sources and background and perspectives, but just taking a narrow slice of the experience. So it's about that random sampling that really truly represents the world's rich tapestry, right? Then comes that crucial step of data cleaning, where we teach partners and carefully identify, remove those variables that might introduce unfair or discriminatory patterns. But we're not done just yet. Then it's the continuous model evaluation, like having a constant performance review of your AI systems in those outputs, right? Then we need to monitor that output to show how the model operates in those real-world scenarios, constantly checking for potential biasness, understanding how it learns, and ensuring that it could generalize the knowledge that it has fairly. And then lastly, some of the coolest techniques include adversarial training, where we're basically teaching AI to recognize, to fight its own biasness. We're reweighting data to balance all representations. And perhaps most importantly, building interdisciplinary teams that bring the diverse perspectives to AI development. And so that's how we're assisting our partners become AI-first organizations.
Let's switch gears for a moment and talk about cybersecurity, which is core to the coverage on our show here. And like other software, when Gen AI came out and the tools were available, not only do you have to think about what's being input from an enterprise perspective, perhaps sensitive data that wasn't intentional gets into one of these applications, or is there such a rush internally and externally to get products out there where perhaps cyber was an afterthought, because at the end of the day, as you're rushing to get these technologies out, your attack exposure opens up more, and with more vendors that you're using and the amount of vulnerabilities that can create. How are you thinking about it when it comes to cyber? Because it feels as if the vulnerabilities that are exposed, it just seems to get exponential when you have these kinds of tools that can be accessed by anyone.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting. Veritone isn't just another tech partner, right? They're on a mission to prove that AI can be a force for positive change. So think of them as an ethical consciousness of the tech world, right? So where does AI for good? What does that actually mean? It's more about just the cool technology. It's a commitment to building AI that doesn't just work, but works responsibly, right? Creating the tools that empower, not exploit, and then setting a new standard for ethical tech development. So Veritone is basically that role model in the AWS partner ecosystem, that they're showing other tech companies that you can develop this cutting edge technology, protect user privacy, create meaningful social impact, and then build trust in the technology that we serve. So Veritone is rewriting the playbook on responsible AI development. And so their approach is just simple. They're not just asking, can we build this? But instead they're asking, should we build this, and how can we make this better, right? And so their AWS Generative AI Center of Excellence is really their proving ground. So it's not just a program, but it's a launch pad for partners like Veritone who really want to do tech differently. And then we provide practical resources, ethical guidelines, tools for responsible innovation, and a blueprint for trustworthy AI development. And Veritone, essentially, they're showing that AI is not just about algorithms or data. It's really about that human potential. And they're proving just that the technology can be a powerful tool for positive transformation.
Right. And Ryan, this was a perfect segue for you as an influencer when it comes to good principles in the facet of your solutions and so forth, and certainly being a groundbreaker when it comes to setting this example. Do you think overall the industry is doing a good job by advancing the ethical and responsible use of AI?
I do. I think, because of the speed and velocity that candidly with ChatGPT being dropped on the world, right, how fast the demand was for not just corporations, but you and I to start using these tools, there's no way that legal or nation states or legislation is going to keep up with that. So by default, and I think AWS is a great example, and many companies is it has to start with the companies themselves. Those who are creating and presenting and making available these technologies, they have to self-police. They have to make sure that they're putting in the guardrails fast enough. So yes, obviously, there's not probably a single county or municipality across the United States at a minimum, right, that is not coming up with some ethical use of AI and trying to come up with forms of governance around this for protection. but that it's too slow, right? And so I think you touched on a couple things that I'll just comment on is cybersecurity. The biggest culprit with some of this stuff is because the demand is so high, it's users, it's user input. It's right. We're the vulnerabilities, right? Where, I mean, again, if you're in a company, we all have our own very detailed, I'd say, governance and ethics programs published on, hey, this is the approved LLMs you can use. This is what you can use in a prompt. I mean, these things are so powerful. I can dump in, every single earnings release we've ever created in the entire universe. You can just start, and that's fine if it's public. But as you know, it's so easy to take confidential information or proprietary information and potentially input those as a prompt into these LLMs. And you're kind of touching on that, Jill, is that's where it can get really scary and dicey. So I don't think it is the world of cybersecurity, but I think because of the demand, and a lot of this is open source and this arms race of companies that are building these multimodality models, putting them out there I think it's harder to govern the user input function, the user tools, which is always the biggest threat. We always talk about cyber and malware and all stuff like that. The biggest threats at this stage are human error. And that's, I think, an area that, and to be very clear, AWS and their tools and what they're envisioning with Nova models that they're building, they're thinking as much about the prompt management, right? The input, not just the output, which I think is something that we all got to get ahead of.
Yeah.
Hey,
And
Ryan,
I'm sorry.
Hey, Ryan, I could
One
just
last
add
point.
one more thing on top of that. It's all about having an AI literate organization, right? And having a robust AI literacy strategy, not just for the teams that use AI, but does your boardroom, your C-suite, do the executives know how to use AI? Do they have a high level of AI literacy? Can they perform an AI risk assessment for the tools they're bringing in the organization? It all starts with that robust AI literacy strategy. And then how do you update that strategy? Is there an enablement strategy every other week or every other month or the first half of the year? Our organizations, everyone's going to be advanced prompt engineers. In the second half of the year, we talk about risk and governance, things like this. So I think all of these strategies start with one, a data strategy, and then two, as we enable our teams to use AI, we need to empower them to have a high level of AI literacy with a continuous development learning plan to support it.
Right. And Milan, you must have read my mind, because I was going to wrap this up asking Tara how Vital Voices, how they're thinking about, top-down leadership as it relates to technology, whether we're thinking about the ethical and responsible use of the design, the creative end of it. How are you thinking about it in terms of strategy to protect and enable the voices that you represent?
Absolutely. And I'm going to echo a lot of the things that Milan just said there, is that number one is the governance around it, making sure that the individuals within our organization truly understand the power of AI and putting the appropriate parameters around it. As Ryan mentioned, it's those prompts. You don't want to necessarily putting all of your private information, just, focus, on the right levels. So number one, we've been focusing on governance and AI literacy across the organization. And from there, it's just been hands-on training on what types of prompts are useful, and doing those kind of hands-on tests to ensure that when we put this power in the hands of our staff, they're using it in the right way. And one way that, having a tool like Veritone's Digital Media Hub is another way that we guide them through that process. They go in, they see how the AI tagging works, they see the positive effects of AI, because from the nonprofit sector, sometimes there's some hesitance to use new technologies, but we've shown that this AI can be for good, tech can be for good. As long as we put the right parameters around it, we can accelerate the growth of our organization globally in a very accelerated manner by using tech, by using AI, as long as we use it in the correct way.
All right. And we will certainly leave that on a positive note. Appreciate all of your insights. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.